Well, as Robbo mentioned, the data is in, and Australia, you've shown us your tips. And it was kind of shocking, I'm not going to lie. Turns out we're tipping more than ever before.
Wow.
I do tip a small amount because they do get a good wage in Australia.
Overseas we tipped a lot. It's just not the norm here, I think.
$25.20. That was the average tip in Australia in 2024, a 25% increase from 2023. City Slickers led the charge, with Melburnians and Brisbaneites the most generous, while Sydney-siders and Perthites were the stingiest.
The frequency of tipping in metro areas is higher than in regional areas, and particularly in places like Melbourne, which saw the highest average tip out of anywhere in Australia.
Here in Sydney, it's just because of the cost of living.
Melbourne especially is a lot of just like cafes and little businesses, so it makes sense that they support that sort of thing.
And it's not just hospitality workers benefiting from our generosity. Beauticians are taking home some extra moolah, along with tattooists, barbers, and even taxi drivers.
I base the amount I tip on my own earnings. If I had more money, I'd tip more. Does that make sense?
But given we're all tightening our belts,
the soaring cost of living
Australians struggling with the cost of living
is hitting harder than ever before.
why are we tipping more?
EFTPOS terminals, which prompt the customers discreetly for a tip, allows people to leave that gratuity. Definitely we're seeing a trend where businesses who are accepting electronic payments are more likely to receive a positive gratuity at the end of an experience.
It's not all good news for service industries, though. The data shows overall we're still not a tipping nation. Customers including gratuity on less than 1% of transactions.
Tipping definitely doesn't represent the majority, but it's still on the rise.
We don't tip, it's just people get paid a wage and that's it. I don't get tipped at work, nor do you.
If we had better service, I think there'd be more tipping.
So should Aussies be coughing up cash for customer service, or is it un-Australian to tip?
Khanh Ong is a foodie, former MasterChef contestant and a restaurateur, and he's here to give us a tip. Khanh.
Hey.
Yeah. Sorry, I just walked into a pun I didn't intend. Do you tip?
I tip. I feel guilty though, so I tip.
When you tip, what?
You feel guilty for tipping? No, I feel guilty, so I tip because I know how hard the service industry works. I know how hard the waiters work, and then the tips don't even just go to them. It goes back of house as well to the bussies, to the chefs. It's a whole thing. So tips get split, right, basically at restaurants.
Right.
I always tip, even if the service is not particularly good, because like you, I feel that you need to make a point that you're there and you're going to help out. Yeah. Should I tip if the service is no good?
Oh, I think that's up to you, but for me, I do just because I still feel bad. Like, I feel like it's not the front-facing person that you're tipping, just them. It's everyone else. And also, they could be having a bad day. There could be a lot going on. They'll be on their feet all day. The job is hard. The job is really difficult. So I tip. I might tip a little bit less, but I always do tip. I think, we saw it in the package there, EFTPOS, the rise of paying by card, is why people are tipping more, because it gives you an option often, and you've probably been on the other side of it in your working career. Is it weird when you see, because often I'll be the options are 5%, 25%, 40%, and I pretend I'm going to do 40%, and then I go 0. Is it awkward to be on the other side of that, watching people just have a breakdown? You know, when I used to be at the counter, once in a while I'll be on the counter and people will come up and they'll pay their bill. I would just look the other way because I'm this is so awkward for me as well. It's awkward. Yes, it is very, very awkward.
You're not judging people who don't tip? Just a little bit?
No, I'm not judging, but I kind of know.
Who's this stingy?
You know. And usually it's the people that you don't expect to tip that would give the biggest tips. And people that I think will tip won't. People on dates always tips.
Hell yeah.
Big groups always tip.
Yeah, yes. And it does actually go to stuff, because I heard that it goes to replace broken glasses and stuff. Is that not a thing?
It shouldn't. It
That's
definitely
not a no.
No, it's definitely a no.
If you had great service, but your meat was a bit dry, or you had a great meal, but the attitude from the waiter is a bit annoying, can you just tip towards one person?
So usually what I do is, if I go to a restaurant, I know that most tips get shared, right? So I'll have the EFTPOS tip, and there's always a 10 or 20 on the side just in case the service is exceptional. I'll go, here's another 20 for you.
If the service is really good, I'll often pull out a $20 note and just slip it into the hand of the person and then tip on the machine. What sort of percentage should we be doing?
I don't think it's a percentage thing. I know that people always talk about it being a percentage thing, but it's more to me 20, 50, depending on how much the bill is, but I don't think it should be broken down to like 5, 10 or 15, 20%.
So I hear everything you're saying, and I don't begrudge anyone getting tips in that industry.
Yeah.
But I really worry about the idea of us developing a tipping culture.
Yeah.
Because they have it in America, it becomes an excuse for really low wages. It becomes a way that, you know, businesses can put prices up without actually being honest about it.
Yep.
It forces everyone into this awkward encounter you described before every time. It is such a relief to leave America and just know I just pay this amount. Is it worth preserving our non-tipping culture for those reasons?
I actually don't think we have a tipping culture.
No, we don't, but is it worth protecting that?
Yeah, well, I think that we are protecting it because, like, the percentage shows that the majority of people don't tip, right?
Yeah.
I find that people who work in hospo do tip, and it's more about, you know, being like, hey, I understand how hard your job is and how well you're doing at it. Here's a little bit of money. I also tip at the bar, but first round, I go real hard at the bar so that they're like, oh, he's
flowing.
nice. We're going to go back and serve him first.
Clever. Very clever.
Also, if you own a restaurant, get Steve Price in, it sounds like.
Right tip right
Getting a
there.
lot of money
Khanh, we love you. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks again for having me.